Shalom Aleichem. Today is Yom Hamishi, Thursday. Kaf Gimel Be'elul Tavshin Pei Daled, corresponding to the 26th of September 2024. We continue in Hilchot Avodah Zarah, L'Hokot HaGoyim, the Rabbeinu Rambam, Perek Heth, Halacha Hey, or Gimel, depending on your edition. Omer Harav, Rambam states as follows: Yisrael shezakaf levena leishtahawot la. This was something that was known in ancient times. They would take a brick of some kind and stand it upright and bow down to it and worship it. But in this case, the non-Jew in question, the Jew in question, that was his intention. But he did not in fact do so. And then a non-Jew came along and did so, worshipped this brick. This concept of a brick being erected upright is reminiscent of the concept of a maseva, what is called in the Torah maseva, which we know is some kind of a stone, rock, usually a rock that was considerably longer than it was wide, that was erected and buried in the ground up to a point so that it would stand upright. And this was one type of Avodah Zarah, one type of worship, which we find also that Yaakov Avinu alav shalom erected a maseva, for example, when it was mutar to do so. So a Jew erected such a thing with the intention of using it for Avodah Zarah. He did not do so, but a non-Jew did so. Asara b'hana'ah, the non-Jew, by doing so, has now made this rock, this stone, asur. We may not benefit from it. Shezekifatha ma'aseh, the act of erecting it and burying it in the ground, the base of it, so that it will stand upright. This is an action, and any action regarding an object which the non-Jew performs now transforms it into something which is connected to Avodah Zarah, and it becomes asur, like anything else. Same is true with regards to an egg. Again, these concepts are strange and unclear to us, but nevertheless, this is how things were done, and that is why Hazal refer to these things. And today they might be similar, but some slightly different permutations of these concepts, of these activities. If a person took a large pumpkin, I say large, doesn't say here large, but I'm assuming that it was fairly large, and cut it probably in half, and worshipped it, asara, then it becomes asur. All these things, of course, are something sheyesh bahem tefusat yad adam. These are all things that a person can take hold of and take possession of. We're not talking about worshipping a mountain as we were before in earlier halachot, or worshipping a river or something of that nature. Where the halacha was im en bazet tefusat yad adam, then if it's not something that a human being created or can take hold of, then it cannot become asur. Of the Avodah Zarah do not have this power to turn the world into something which we cannot benefit from. But a specific item, yes, they can do such a thing. اشتهوا لحسيها دلعت وحسيها أحير معربه. Here, in this case, the person took the same pumpkin and cut it in half, but the two halves are not completely severed, one from the other. That's what it means, معربه. In other words, it's still connected. Hareza asur misafek. So the second, and he worshipped only half of it. There is therefore a safek now with regards to the other half because they're not completely two separate items. Shema zeh hesi kamo yad hesi hane'evad, because perhaps the one half, which is still connected to the other half, is like the handle or some kind of accessory which allows him to move it or take hold of it or what have you. And if that's the case, then it's considered to be part of the Avodah Zarah itself. Very well. Halacha well. Ilan. Ilan shenuta'o mitahila sheyene evad. Asur b'hana. A tree that was planted from the outset with the intention of it being a form of Avodah Zarah or being connected to Avodah Zarah in some way, asur b'hana, may not be benefited from in any way. Wazahi ashera ha'amura b'Torah, and such a tree has the status of an asherah, which is mentioned in the Torah many times, as we have discussed in the past. And I think I also mentioned in the past, and I repeat here, that if today we have, this is not if, it's a fact, there are such things. There are people who worship trees. There are people who perform, even to this day, there are people who perform all kinds of ceremonies and tree huggings and who knows what. It's difficult to really be on top of these things. I admit that I'm somewhat overwhelmed by the level of insanity, but there you have it. There are such things. There are such groups. I understand that in the world, sorcery and magic and demon worship and what have you, satanic worship, I understand these things are on the rise, which does not really surprise me, because I think it is a clear indication of the degeneration and downward spiral of the Western world in general, and therefore one should expect these phenomena. So you should not be surprised if there are people who fit this bill very, very precisely even today. So any such tree is an asherah. Haya ilan natua uvda'o ufisalo l'shem avodah zarah. So there was, if you had a tree and a person cut it down and made it into some kind of an idol, some kind of image, a talisman, or what have you, with Avodah Zarah in mind. Afilu hivrichu hirkiv b'gufo shel ha'ilan v'hosei saririm korethet ha'saririm v'hem asurim b'hana'a u'shar ha'ilan mutar. The word hivrich refers to the horticultural action of taking a branch and bending it down, and so that part of it is actually buried in the earth or touching the earth, and then you cover it over with some more earth usually, in order that it will begin to take root from that point in the earth, and eventually you'll end up with another tree. So that's hibrich, from the word berech, like knee. In other words, it has to do with the bending of the branch. And this branch did in fact produce saririm, in other words, new growth, new branches. It is possible to cut off those saririm, those new branches, and they are asur because they sprout from this tree that is asur. Ushar haylan mutar, and the rest of the tree is mutar. He worships a tree, bounds down to a tree, even though as we've discussed before, a tree itself is something which is created by Hashem, not by man. A man does not produce a tree yesh me'ayin, ex nihilo. So a person who worships a tree as it is, without doing anything else to it, אף על פי שלא נאסר על גופו, כל השרירים והעלים והלולבים והפירות שיוציא, כל זמן שהוא נעבד, הרי אלו אסורים בהנאה. But anything that sprouts from that tree while it is an object of worship, they become asur בהנאה. הלכה זין, אילן, שהיו הגויים משמרים את פירותיו. So you have a tree, and Gentiles, they do not worship the tree per se, but it is set aside for purposes to do with Avodah Zarah. For example, Mishamarim et perotho, it is a tree that produces fruit, and these non-Jews take this fruit. ואומרים שהם מוכנים לעשות מהם שחר לבית עבודה זרה פלונית. And their purpose is to take the fruit, shall we say, it's an apple tree, and they produce from this apple tree some kind of a cider. And they say that, and they produce this cider for the purpose of Avodah Zarah. What does that mean? How do you worship Avodah? How do you worship cider? Or how can it be used for Avodah Zarah? This is a special cider which is set aside for the purpose of being drunk on certain days that they consider to be holy days, festival days. Well, that is what is referred to in the Mishneh, in the Talmud, in Halacha as Yom Edam. They're special days. The word Edam really means the day of the catastrophe. Ed is a catastrophe or a disaster. So this is a term used by Chazal to refer to their festival days. So instead of Yom Edam, what you should understand is Yom Evlam, the day of their mourning, or something very, very negative. So such a tree, this tree, all of it is asur b'hana. We must assume that it is an asherah. It has the status of an asherah. And therefore, the fruit of this tree is considered special, and that is why the whole tree is asur, not just the shechar, the drink, the cider they produce from it. Shezohi hukah shel asherah. This is one of the types of worship of an asherah that were known at least in the time of Chazal. And again, I'm not at all certain that such things do not exist today in certain groups or cults or sects or what have you.
Rabbi?
Yes.
In the end of the previous halakha, we learned that all the, I guess, derivatives of the tree are asur as long as it's being worshipped. If the tree was grown naturally, that seems to imply that if the tree was worshipped as a one-time thing, then its produce would be okay. It would only be asur if it was worshipped for some long period of time in which certain things were able to grow. Is that correct?
It seems what you're saying seems to be correct. Yes, that as long if it was worshipped only for a day, for example, and then this tree was abandoned, and no one cares about it now. It's not ne'vad any longer, and therefore that which grows from it is mutar. Yes, that's what I understand. Okay, halacha hayth daled ilan shema'amidim tahta avodah zarah. Now, why would you do that? Why would you place some kind of image or idol under a tree? So one reason, at least, is that the tree provides shade, or is simply a pleasant, pleasing place to erect this idol and worship it. And therefore, the tree is playing a role, even though it's not worshipped as such. It is playing a role in this Avodah Zarah. Kol zaman shehi tahto asur bahana, as long as this idol, this image, or whatever it is that's being worshipped, is placed under that tree, under the shade of this tree, that tree is asur bahana. Nitala mitahto avodah zarah. If this avodah zarah was now removed, the tree reverts to being a regular tree in every way. It's not worshipped, and therefore it's mutar. Halacha Taif, or continuation of Daled. Bayith shebana otho hagoy mitahila sheyeh habayith asmo ne'avad. A non-Jew built some house, some structure, with the intention that it itself be worshipped. So it's some kind of a temple or something of that sort. Or he who worships a building that is a standing building. It wasn't built initially with that purpose in mind, but it became such a thing. That house is now asur b'hana'ah. Haya banui. If a house was already built and standing, v'siyado, v'chiyaro. In other words, siyado means it was painted. Usually it's referring to white paint. Therefore, seed, which is lime. V'siyado, v'chiyaro. And it was also carved and beautified. L'shem avodah zarah ad shenithadesh. So that now we are talking about something, a new reality. In other words, originally there was just a simple plain structure with undressed or uncarved stones. And now it has been painted, plastered, chiseled and carved, so that now something new stands before us. If that can be removed, let's say it can be chiseled away, all the beautiful carvings or symbols or whatever it was that were carved onto the stone are now removed from the stone. That hidush, if that is now removed, hidush asur b'hana, and that itself is asur b'hana, because that was done with the intention of worship. And the rest of the structure is mutar. It's not asur b'hana. If a person took such a house and such a structure and placed Avodah Zarah within it, Kol zaman shehisham habayit asur b'hana'ah. As long as those items that are connected to Avodah Zarah are to be found there, the building is asur. Hosiah hutara bayit. If it was removed, then the structure becomes mutar, not asur b'hana'ah. So an example, a practical example, if a person is on some kind of a tour, wherever it might be, and they come across this church. It's a very beautiful church, and the tour guide wants to show you inside and describe to you when it was built and all the wonderful artwork inside and whatever it might be. As long as it still functions as a church, as long as there are items within that structure that pertain to Avodah Zarah, that bayit is asur b'hana'ah, and it must not be entered, or even if you're entering it simply to get out of the rain, for example, or to rest in the shade inside that building. That's a hana'ah, which is asur to benefit from with regards to that specific structure. Yod v'chen even shahasavah mitahila le'ovda asura b'hana'ah. A stone that was quarried mitahila le'ovda from the outset. Its initial intention was that it be worshipped in some way. Asura b'hana'ah may not be benefited from. So you may not take that stone, that rock, what have you, and you use it to build your home. If a stone was already quarried without the intention of any Avodah Zarah related intention, and now it was carved and beautified with this intention of Avodah Zarah, even if we're talking about the stone itself being carved or changed in some way, or if it was painted, that's obvious. Again, that which was done to it to change its natural state, but with this intention in mind, that is asur, and if that is removable, let it be removed. And the rest of the stone reverts to being the natural, unworked stone, and therefore is mutar. Now, on the other hand, what if a person took such a large rock stone that was used as a basis for Avodah Zarah? It was erected or arranged in such a way so that an idol of some kind could be placed on top of it. It acts as a pedestal. As long as the Avodah Zarah is on it, the stone itself is also considered part of the Avodah Zarah and is asur b'hana'ah. Silek Avodah Zarah ha'even mutareth. Once it is removed, that stone reverts to being mutar. These can all be quite practical, relevant halachot. Again, if you're building a house and there was something, some kind of a stone that provided a pedestal, a stand for Avodah Zarah, you may not benefit from that stone. You may not take it and add it to your wall that you're building. But if the Avodah Zarah was removed from it, then that stone is now mutar, and you may benefit from it, and that can be very, very significant in terms of its value, etc. Halacha Yod Aleph. Mishaya Betho Samuch Lebet Avodah Zarah. We're talking here about a person, a Jew whose home is samuch. Now, what does that mean, samuch? It's not just next door. They share a wall. They have a common wall, and his home is literally built onto that other building. And that wall is also standing. It rests on a spot on land that belongs to Avodah Zarah. Nafal, and that wall collapsed. Now, asur livnoto, you may not rebuild that wall, because by doing so, you're also rebuilding or repairing the structure next door to you, which shares this wall with you. So what can you do? It's your home. You have to do something. He must withdraw. In other words, move towards his own property a little bit, away from where it was standing before. And there you may build a new wall. And you also must, having done so, you must fill the gap now between the new wall that you created and the Avodah Zarah next door with things. Kosim talks about thorns, thistles, or so'ah, excrement, or other disgusting and undesirable things, so that these people will not be able to now use that space, that extra room for extending their Avodah Zarah, for expanding the building. If, on the other hand, this wall legally belonged both to him and to the Avodah Zarah next door. And that was the legal status of this wall, which is now collapsed. Yidon mehesa lemehesa. Mehesa shelo mutar b'hana v'shel Avodah Zarah asur. Half of that space, half of that wall, which belongs to him, is mutar b'hana, and the other half is asur. Avano wa'isa wa'afaro hakol asur b'hana. But all, in terms of the space, it is mutar. If half of the space on which the wall stood belongs to you, then that half is mutar b'hana. But all parts of the wall itself, the stones and the cement, any wood or woodwork or anything to do with the structure of the wall, all of it is asur b'hana. So only the actual space itself half of it can be considered mutar, but not the actual physical elements of the wall. All right, now at the beginning of this perek, we learned, or I should say, I'm sorry, perek Zayin. You should be able to see now perek Zayin at the beginning. We learned miswaf asehi la'abed avodah zarah. There's a miswaf aseh to destroy all forms of avodah zarah and anything which pertains to it. And now, in this halakha, now perek heth halakha yod beth, we read as follows: Kesad ma'abed avodah zarah u'sha'ad dvarim shehem asurim bighlala k'gon v'shamashah v'tikra v'tshara. How does one actually go about destroying avodah zarah as avodah zarah? What is considered sufficient destruction? In other words, when is something considered to have been negated? And this applies not only to the idol itself, shall we say, which is what the word Avodah Zarah here basically refers to, but anything to do with it, as we said before, any paraphernalia, any accessories, or anything that is offered to it, all this needs to be destroyed. What do you do? Shohek uzorel ruah or soref matil liyam melach. you may grind up and turn into a kind of dust the item itself, and then literally throw it to the wind so that it's, for all intents and purposes, ceases to exist. Or either alternately, you may burn it and throw it into Yam HaMelach, as we've discussed before. A similar halakha exists with regards to chametz before Pesach. That one way of destroying chametz, being rid of chametz, is also shohek v'zorel ruach, etc. That which is sufficient for Avodah Zarah is sufficient for chametz as well. Davar she'en bo tefusat yad adam shene'evad. This is now halacha yod gimel or zayin. Something which is a naturally occurring phenomenon or object, shene'evad, but it's worshipped by the goyim. Kiron harim uvehema u'ilan. In other words, a hill, a mountain, an animal, or a tree. As we've discussed, even though the object itself is mutar because it was not created by man, and it is not something that man can take possession of. Sipuyo asurim b'hana. If it was, let's say, some kind of something which covers it, some kind of something which is placed on it to beautify it, etc. That itself, even though it sits on something which is asur, cannot become asur because it en botefusat yadadam, but the covering is considered asur b'hana. And he benefits from such a thing. Lokeh is hayav for benefiting from Avodah Zarah and from coveting. Lo tahmod kesef or zahav alehem. We're talking about items which were laid over with gold or silver or jewels or what have you, and the person, the Jew, is interested in the gold or the jewels, etc., in question. And the Torah says explicitly, "Lo tahmod kesef or zahav alehem." You must not. You must have no interest and not covet in any way these items, even though they're very valuable. And any such overlaid material is considered mishamasheh Avodah Zarah, and therefore must be destroyed. All right, now. הלכה י"ד, אוחף עבודה זרה של הגויים שביטלו הגויים קודם שתבוא ליד ישראל. Till now we were discussing Avodah Zarah of non-Jews usually. That would be the case normally, and how a Jew must go about destroying it. Let's say, on the other hand, now we have some Avodah Zarah, some idol, and the goyim themselves negated it. In other words, they decided this was no longer an object of worship. The goyim themselves now say that this is now out of fashion. This idol is no longer worshipped. It's now just an idol. It's just an image. It's something you can place in your living room to decorate your home or something, but it's not an idol in any way. That is now mutar b'hana. Shenemar pesile Elohehem tisrafun ba'esh. They're idols which are Elohuth, which are divine in their eyes. You must destroy it with fire, or in other ways, as we discussed, grinding it up and into dust, etc. B'shebau liyadenu wahem noharim bahem Elohuth. This is true as long as when these items come to our possession, into our possession, we become owners of this thing, and it is still considered some kind of a divine or holy object, then it is a sort to benefit from it. But if they themselves have moved on to some new worship, or they just gave up on that one, or something of that nature, then it is no longer considered a surah. So if, for example, one has some kind of an image, one came into possession of such an idol or image of some kind, one may not sell it to people who worship that thing because you're benefiting from it. Nor may you sell it to some museum as if it is still worshipped by these people, because the museum might be interested in displaying it. But if it's clear that these people no longer worship this thing, and you came across this item, and there's a museum willing to pay you a lot of money for it, you're allowed to sell it, because it is now just an artifact, as anything else might be considered of interest by such people, and they're willing to pay for it. That's their problem. It's their business. You are not engaging in anything at all to do with Avodah Zarah, because it is no longer worshipped as Avodah Zarah. This is all true, however, of Avodah Zarah of non-Jews, who also tend to be fickle about such things. They can change their mind. They can adopt some new system, new idea, religion, creed, whatever it might be. However, Avodah Zarah shel Yisrael eina batala le'olam. Avodah Zarah that was created by and worshipped by a Jew who was an apostate, who was a min, eina batala le'olam. It cannot be. It is cannot be negated. Even if it was owned jointly with a non-Jew, the item in question cannot simply be dropped and no longer considered Avodah Zarah. Ela asura b'hana le'olam u'te'una geniza. In other words, it has to be gotten rid of. The Lashon of the Rambam here, te'una geniza, does not necessarily clearly imply that it must be destroyed physically. If it's ganuz in some place, buried, shall we say, in a place where no one will find it, that would be considered geniza. Ravad and others write that it must be destroyed completely, physically, as we saw before. The same is true of any form of Avodah Zarah, some image, shall we say, of a non-Jew, which is now in the possession of a Jew. One having come into the possession of a Jew, and then later the non-Jew in question negated and no longer negated its status as Avodah Zarah, and bitulo mu'il kalu. That action of the non-Jew, or that statement, this is no longer Avodah Zarah, has no halachic state meaning or validity. And bitulo mu'il kalum ela asura b'hana le'olam. It remains a sur for all time. When Yisrael mevatel Avodah Zarah ba'afilu b'reshut hagoy. And a Jew cannot negate the status of some Avodah Zarah, even if the non-Jew is agreeable to doing so. In other words, a Jew, let's say he bought a garage sale, I don't know, the son of a non-Jew who died is selling off his father's property. And one of the things is some kind of an idol. It belonged to this non-Jew who now died, and it was used for Avodah Zarah. The son has no interest in it, and he wishes to sell it. The Israel, the Jew who buys it, cannot negate its status as Avodah Zarah, even if the non-Jew, the son in this case, is agreeable. He has not got the power to do that. If a goy, as we saw previously, if a goy does so with his own Avodah Zarah in his lifetime, and he says this is no longer Avodah Zarah, this is just a piece of stone, or a cast bronze image or something, and it has no religious meaning any longer, then he, being the owner of that thing, may do so. But if it comes into the possession of a Jew, he may not do so. Goy katan or shoteh. So we've discussed that a non-Jew may negate a non-Jew may negate Avodah Zarah by an act of will. But this act of will precisely must be done by a person who has legal agency, not by a katan, not by a minor, or a shoteh, a person who doesn't really know what he's doing. Person of who is either suffering from some mental condition, or is or retarded, or something of that nature. וגוי שביטל עבודה זרה, בין שלו, בין של גויים אחרים בעל כורחו, אף על פי שאנסו ישראל על כך, הרי זו בטלה. Now, a goy who was forced to do so he's not a katan, he's not a shoteh, he's a normal, everyday Gentile who knows what he's doing, and he decides to mevatel, to do away with the divine, holy nature of this item, even if it belongs to him or to other non-Jews. Even though he was coerced by a Jew to do so, the item in question is, but it no longer has the status of Avodah Zarah, on condition that this goy himself is a worshipper of such an Avodah Zarah. It's not meaningful at all if some professor of archaeology is digging up some site and comes across such an image, and he tells us this thing has no significance because he doesn't believe in it. It doesn't interest him in the least. He has no power. He has no agency to do such a thing. A person who believes in it and says this is now meaningless, then that statement is significant halachically as well, because it became asur because of the intention of the goy in the first place, and it can lose that status also by an act of will, of intention. But he who considers it not to be of any value to begin with, so there is no change of will or intent with regards to this thing on his part. As far as he is concerned, it was always just a physical item of no religious significance. All right, the next halacha. Halacha Yud Zayin. Hamlevatel avodah zarah. Bitel meshamesheha. So if a Jew came into possession of some Avodah Zarah, and he negated its existence, and together with that, he also received certain meshameshim, certain items that go with it. Then by doing away with the ikar, the tafel follows. It's like similar to Bikot HaNe'anin, called Shu ikar ve'imot tafela. Mevarech al ha'ikar u'foter ha'tafela. So here also, mevater ha'ikar u'mevater mimela, the rest of it also goes along with it. Bitel meshamashah mutarim. If you mevatel only the paraphernalia, the items that go with it, we hear surabana kamoshayita, but the rest you didn't. Then the rest it remains a surah, the main aspect, the idol, until it is negated. With tikrovet avodah zarah, on the other hand, tikrovet avodah zarah is actually more hamur. So, for example, that which is offered up to avodah zarah in any way cannot be negated. Once it was offered up, it attains that status of tikrovet avodah zarah, that which was offered before avodah zarah, and remains so for all time. So it can only be destroyed or buried or burnt or something of that sort.
Rabbi,
Yes.
a few halachot ago, we learned about a shared wall that one of its owners was using it for Avodah Zarah purposes that fell down. We learned that the wall remnants are asur b'hanaya.
Yes.
Is that because of there's some sort of safek about which component of the wall belonged to whom? Or is it just the entire wall is asur even when it was standing, and only the land itself upon which the wall was standing on is mutar?
All physical parts of that wall are asur also.
So even when the wall was standing, the Jewish person in whose house it was wouldn't be able to get any hana from that wall.
So I understand, yes. All right. We shall stop here for today. היו ברוכים, יזכו ויאמץ לבבכם, כל המייחלים לאדוני. Shalom u'nisachon.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.